Eric Bischoff here again, telling you about our friends over at SaveWithConrad.com. Now, Conrad's always talking about how they are helping homeowners save money, but did you know that Conrad and his team can also help you become a homeowner? They make the home buying process more enjoyable than, I don't know, making out with Stephanie and Linda. Ouch! But don't take my word for it.
Hi, I'm Sarah Davis, and I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. So my husband has been a huge fan of Conrad's podcast for many, many years. And for years, we were on road trips, and he would have me listen to it. And then I got really into it. And so when it came time for us to buy a house, it was kind of like, there's really no other option at this point. Like, we have to go down this path, right? It was the best. I worked with Steve. I don't know what to do. I was looking more for preparing to buy a house. How do I get this in order? What does this need to look like? What do I need to move around? What's more important that I pay off first? Because I'm a first-time home buyer. I don't know what that needs to look like. So that's when I called you guys and I talked with Steve, and phenomenal from day one. I got a full education on home buying before I was ever asked to fill out an application, before I was ever asked to do anything, which is just, I cannot brag on you guys enough. I literally cannot tell enough people about you, because we would not have a home if it weren't for you, if it weren't for that interaction and weren't for the learning process. And I feel like I went into being a first-time home buyer by the time we got through the end of the process with the same education that people need 4 or 5 homes to buy. And so now I feel like, all right, well, we can do this. We can do real estate. I can actually make good decisions and ask good questions at closing and beyond because of everything that you taught me. My name is Sarah Davis, and I got into my dream home with Save with Conrad.
And unlike the dirt sheets, we're not making this up. Check out all the 5-star reviews. Go to SaveWithConrad.com and do it today. You'll be grateful you did.
NMLS number 65084, Equal Housing Lender. Woo!
Welcome to Something To Wrestle with Bruce Prichard. Well, you know,
That's not a rib.
She pooted. What a rib. No, yeah,
There's no box of gimmicks.
Rumor and innuendo.
I don't deal in rumor and innuendo. And was he there? I was there. I don't give a shit. I ain't scared.
I ain't scared of shit.
Fuck him.
You, Bruce.
I love you.
double cheeseburger, double cheese, double mayo, double onion, motherfucker.
Bruce Prichard.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard. Bruce, what's going on, man? How are you?
Been a rough week.
Dude.
Been a rough week, to say the least.
The worst. We have gotten a lot of bad news this week in our wrestling community, but today we're going to be celebrating a great man as best we can, and hopefully we can provide a worthy distraction and try to make you laugh a little bit. We lost Terry Funk, my man. And I have a new friend who knows that I am a wrestling fan, and they've started watching some current wrestling, and they had heard about Terry Funk passing, and they asked me, hey, what can you tell me about Terry Funk? And I didn't really know where to begin. And I said to him, Bruce, Terry Funk is your favorite wrestler's favorite wrestler. How's that for a description?
Very accurate. Terry Funk is responsible for so many people in the business, being an inspiration, being the guy that they wanted to be like, being the mentor and the old man on the hill that everyone listened to, middle-aged and crazy. But Terry Funk was just so much more than that. You know, to me, it was crazy. I'm going to tell you guys, we did a tribute, this past Friday, 2 of our warriors that we lost. And Cody sent me a text and says, hey man, can you give me one thing to say, about Terry Funk? And I sent back to him, your mother's a whore. And I had to correct myself. And once he got there, I said, "Hey, man, I'm sorry about the text and everything. I need to walk that back. It's actually your grandmother's a whore." And that got a smile out of him, and went on to help him put together some words that he spoke this past Friday. But that's who Terry Funk was. Terry Funk was unpredictable. Terry Funk was the guy that no matter what anybody else did, no matter what else happened all around you for that day, Terry Funk would be what you would be talking about for the next week. Good, bad, or indifferent. That was just the kind of guy that he was.
Just a special human being. We've done our best to pay our tribute to Mr. Funk over on Mick Foley's show. And it was interesting because I think I sort of get lost in time sometimes in that Terry Funk started wrestling in 1965 before we landed on the moon. Lyndon B. Johnson was the president. Most people didn't have color TVs. I mean, this guy was a staple in wrestling throughout so many different eras. Of course, he was born back in 1944, but I think he was born in Indiana, but the reality is he became a Texas legend, and, his dad before him and obviously his brother Dory. I mean, they were professional wrestling. I mean, they were the first pair of brothers to ever be the NWA champions. And I mean, the picture we're looking at right now, if you're watching over on YouTube at somethingtowrestle.com, this is like your peak fandom, right? When you were a kid, these were your favorites.
Oh my God. Well, so I can't talk about Terry Funk without talking about the origins of why I wanted to be a wrestler at 4 years old. My very first, image that I can remember as a child was seeing Terry Funk and the Von Brauners, and the Von Brauners trying to cut Terry Funk's ear off. And Terry was bleeding horribly. And we were eating spaghetti at the kitchen table, and we had one black and white television that we had convinced our mother to leave on this spectacle called wrestling. Came from Amarillo. We lived in El Paso, Texas. And Terry was there. The Von Brauners doing this number on him, and there was nobody to save him. I think Ricky Romero finally came out and saved him, but all I remember was crying. Begging my parents to do something because Terry Funk needed help. The commentator was asking if you can help Terry Funk. And I said, call the police. Help Terry Funk, Mom. And she said, honey, this isn't live. This isn't real. He's fine. And I just didn't believe her.
Right.
I wouldn't believe her. And
well, why would you? I mean, Terry Funk would tell you later that she was indeed a whore.
Well, yeah. But Terry was, embroiled in this thing. And then the very next, vivid, and it's funny, the memories that I have that stick with you. And there was a tag team known as the Infernos. They were managed by J.C. Dykes. Gentleman Saul Weingroff was the manager of the Von Brauners. All the heel teams had managers, but the Infernos were managed by J.C. Dykes. J.C. Dykes carried a canteen, and he would give it to his guys to refresh them during matches, and sometimes they would use it as weapons. But one of the Von Brauners, not the Von Brauners, goddamn, one of the Infernos had a club foot. Those don't know what a club foot is. This is when one leg is shorter than the other, and you have to wear a built-up shoe to help even you out when you walk. Well, one of these Infernos had a clubfoot boot, and during the match, he would tap his toe on the mat, and then he would kick his opponent, usually in the head. And his opponent's head would split wide open like a watermelon.
Goodness.
And the Funks were convinced that there was something in that boot, that when the Inferno tapped the toe, that he loaded that boot with something. Because as soon as he was done, he would tap it on his heel, and the referee would check, and there was nothing there. Well, one day, Terry Funk was able to get a hold of Inferno number 2. That was Clubfoot. That was his name, Inferno number 2. Terry got that boot. And I'll never forget the promo, because he told us next week, I'm going to tell everybody what's in that boot. And next week could not come soon enough when Terry Funk sat at the announce table with the Inferno's boot on the table. I said, I got this boot, and my brother and I took it apart. And in here, there's a trap door, so that when the Inferno tapped his foot, there were 2 pounds of lead in that boot that would come to the toe. And when he would kick you in your head, it would do this. And Terry showed the scars of what the Inferno's boot had done to his very own head. And then when he taps it back on his heel, the lead slides to the back so it can't be detected. Well, Inferno number 2, I've got your boot. And I'm going to wear it this Monday night in El Paso, Texas. And I'm going to tap that toe, and I'm going to split your melon wide open, mask and all. I had to be there, man. We actually got to go, and go to the matches every once in a while. But that was Terry Funk, man. Terry Funk was this master storyteller. Terry didn't just give interviews, man. Interviews were for fucking, jabronis. Terry told stories. Terry Funk told stories, man.
Right.
He talked you into the arena because he needed you. And when he was a heel, he would talk you into the arena because his opponent needed you if his opponent were to have half a chance. Without Terry Funk and his brother Dory, I don't know that I ever would have fallen in love with wrestling.
Wow.
They are the sole reason that I couldn't miss a Saturday broadcast. They were the sole reason that I begged to go to wrestling in El Paso every chance we got. We didn't get to go a lot in El Paso. We only got to go like when my older brother who worked at the newspaper could get free tickets from Gory Guerrero. And it was such a love affair with the Funks. I'll never forget when Dory Funk won the NWA World Heavyweight Championship from Gene Kiniski. And it made the front page of the paper.
Wow.
Well, yeah, wow.
It's big news.
Dory Funk Jr., huge news. And, we moved to El Paso. We moved from El Paso to Houston. And I think the most heartbreaking thing to me was that I'll never see the Funks again because they only wrestled in El Paso in my head. I'm a kid. Shit you see in front of you only happens there. It doesn't happen anywhere else. And when we got there, found out that, holy cow, Dory Funk Jr. was actually going to defend the NWA World Heavyweight Championship against Wahoo McDaniel. That was like, oh my God. Didn't know who this Wahoo was, but I didn't like him because he was facing Dory Funk Jr.
That's right.
What I didn't know was that Wahoo was the hero and Dory was going to come in and be not the same Dory Funk that I grew up with. He was going to be this heel since he won the championship. And that bothered me. I still rooted for my favorite Dory Funk because he was my favorite. I just changed my stripes because I moved to another town. I wanted Dory to whoop Wahoo's ass.
Right.
In 1 year's time, Texas and Houston had the champion an unprecedented 9 times. 9 times in 1 year, the NWA World Heavyweight Champion came to Houston, Texas to defend that championship. 8 of those times, he faced Wahoo McDaniel. 1 time, he faced the big cat Ernie Ladd. And Wahoo got hot because Wahoo felt, I'm the guy that faces the champion.
Right.
8 times he failed because you can't beat Dory Funk. Dory Funk's Dory Funk. But that one time, Paul decided to put Ernie Ladd in there. Wahoo got hot. And there were other things, that we don't want to think about that, the Funks instilled in me that just kind of blew my mind. When we were in El Paso, Texas, there was another big wrestler there named Grizzly Smith. Grizzly Smith had an iron stomach. And Grizzly would challenge people from the audience to come in and punch him as hard as they wanted in his stomach. But you had to sign a waiver because you could break your hand. So one day, Harley Race comes out, says, I'd like to not just punch him, but I say if I come off the ladder, that I can break his stomach. And Grizzly said, go ahead, get yourself a ladder. Jump off the ladder onto my stomach.
Okay.
Won't hurt me a bit. And Harley did. Harley set that ladder up. Harley climbed the top of that ladder, and Harley came off that ladder with everything that he had with a knee right across Grizzly Smith's neck. Broke Grizzly's neck. I saw it. Took Grizzly Smith off on a stretcher. The next week they came out and said, sorry, folks. Grizzly Smith has a broken neck. Grizzly Smith has had his last match. Cried at that too, man, because it's like, oh my God, fucking Harley Race. He'll get his one day. And then when we moved to Houston, learned that Grizzly was returning.
Well, it's great.
From his broken neck.
Fantastic.
The only thing was, it seems that Grizzly had done a very similar challenge in Houston.
What do you mean?
Let people hit him with whatever they wanted, same thing, sign a waiver. But it was Johnny Valentine who challenged to come off the top rope here and come across his stomach. And it was Johnny Valentine who came across Grizzly's neck and broke it. No mention of Harley Race and a ladder in El Paso, Texas. And that's when I knew.
Wait a minute.
Very young age, 5 years old, that, damn, that Grizzly Smith's a tough son of a bitch.
That's what you figured out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, I just love talking about Terry Funk. He impacted so many people. And sometimes, in wrestling, I think Dusty famously said, we never let the truth get in the way of a good story. And, of course our show's not about Dusty, but Dusty sometimes would be associated with West Texas State University. And of course, this past Friday night on SmackDown, we even heard Cody reference that, but Terry actually went there along with his brother Dory and Dick Murdoch and Tully Blanchard. And
Dick Murdoch fucking never spent a day in West Texas, except at the fucking West Texas alumni games.
All the other names that are associated, though, it became the end thing to say you went to West Texas State. Like guys like Bruiser Brody and Ted DiBiase and Manny Fernandez and Tito Santana and Barry Windham. And why all of these wrestlers at West Texas State, Bruce? And even it became such a big legendary thing to say that you went there. Guys just started to stretch the truth a little bit. And maybe all these years later, we've just printed the legend. Oh yeah, all these guys went to West Texas State. Why West Texas State, Bruce?
Because that's where the Funks went.
That's right.
Because Dory Funk lettered at West Texas State. Terry Funk lettered in football at West Texas State. They were West Texas State legends. So people wanted to be like Dory and Terry Funk.
Right.
So they said they went. I think Tully actually went there. And I think Tito Santana actually went there. DiBiase went there for a little bit. Not sure about Frank. I don't know. I'm not sure about Brody if he actually attended. Murdoch did not attend. I don't know about Manny Fernandez. I don't think Manny attended. I don't know. Maybe he did, but I know definitely that the Funks did. Not only attended, lettered, and graduated. But the big rib was that Dick Murdoch would play every year in the alumni game.
Yeah.
And they just let him because he was Dick Murdoch. So, that was
fun. That
was the big joke. But it was, look, man, times were so much simpler and so much easier. You had your real life homegrown heroes that you watched, as a kid and or as an adult. The adults watched them grow up before their very eyes, and their father, Dory Funk Sr., was the toughest man alive. And Dory Funk Sr. had the moniker, the king of the Texas death matches, which could go 2 falls or 22 falls. Falls didn't count. You kept going until one man could not answer the bell. And that was Dory Funk Sr.'s thing. It was a very blood and guts. It was ECW before there was an E. It was the roughest. Texas was different, man. It was the Wild West, literally, especially when it came to the wrestling business. It had to be a little rougher and a little tougher. You're in the Panhandle area, man. You're playing to a bunch of cowboys.
That's right.
And the Cowboys, man, they were badass. So you better have some badass athletes in there that those Cowboys are going to think twice about messing with. Well, Terry and Dory Funk were not only cowboys. I mean, they weren't only wrestlers, but they were cowboys, and they were the real thing. Their dad had a ranch called the Flying Mare Ranch. And
what a great name.
That's what he did, man. Flying Mare. And that's where they came from. They were hailed from Umbarger, Texas. And to this day, I have seen it, I'm sure, but to this day, I've never been to Umbarger, Texas. And, the story I told you a while ago, the first time that I ever saw, and I'm going to skip all around here, so I apologize up front, but I was 16 years old in Houston, Texas, and there was this hotel out off of South Main Street in Houston by the Astrodome. It was called the White House Hotel. All the boys stayed there. They stayed there because the rate was like $10 or something like that. And Terry Funk needed a ride, and I gave Terry a ride at 16 years old. We stopped at a stop and go. This is the time frame I remember, was that they had Miller Lite. It was like a brand new beer. Like a light beer? What the fuck's that? Is that a diet beer? What is it? And Miller Lite has just come out. Plus, Burger King had just introduced the double bacon cheeseburger. So Terry goes, can we stop at the stop and go? Yep. Stop at the stop and go. Terry gets 2 6-packs of Miller Lite. Right next to it is Burger King. He says, Prichard, let's go to the Burger King. And we got 6 double bacon cheeseburgers.
Wow.
Couple orders of fries. And I started to order a Coke, and he says, "Oh, I've got beer here." And then we sat in the parking lot of the White House Hotel, and we ate our double bacon cheeseburgers from Burger King, and we drank Miller Lite beer. And I started asking Terry questions and telling Terry stories. I said, first memory of my life, I tell him about the Von Bronner's cutting his ear off. He's, "Oh, goddamn, Prichard, I came back and my father kicked my ass. Said I wasn't selling enough. God damn it, I was selling like hell trying to get those bastards off of me. They were killing me." And just to hear, the stories about the Von Bronner's chopping his ear off, the Infernos and the Clubfoot. And then he's asking me, what do you do? Do you play sports? What do you do? I told him about karate. I told him about football. And I told him that I'd really screwed up my knee, and that the doctor at 16 years old, the doctor told me, he goes, "You're going to have surgery on that knee." And Terry Funk said to me, "Son, don't get your knee operated on. You're going to be fine. Once those bastards go in, they'll go in again and again and again and again. They're queer for the goddamn knife. They love it. Don't let them do it." He told me about he had 4 surgeries in this one, 6 surgeries in this one. I went home. Next day, told my mom. Said, "Mom, not doing that surgery." She says, "What do you mean?" Doctor says, "You're probably going to have it over the summer." I said, "Nope." Terry Funk told me once they go in, they never stop. So I'm not going to do it. So I did not get surgery when I probably should have at a very young age. Plus, I was still growing. It would have been stupid to get the surgery then. But Terry Funk told me not to get knee surgery, and that stuck with me forever. Because, by God, they keep going in. They love it. They just want to experiment on you. God, hey, they call it medical practice because they don't know what the fuck they're doing. They're practicing on you. It's not medical expert. It's not someone that knows what it's medical practice. Because they're just going to practice on you. Don't let them do it. By God, it made sense to me. Still does to this day, as a matter of fact.
We should talk about Terry Funk's dad here. Of course, Dory Funk, Sr. passed away at just 54 years old. What do you remember about the passing of Dory Funk Sr.? He passed away in June of 73. I know you were a fan, you were paying attention, you were keeping up. Tell me about Dory Funk Sr.
The legend, man. He was a patriarch. People talk about Fritz Von Eric and the kids. Fritz was the patriarch of the Von Eric family, and Fritz ruled with an iron fist. And Fritz, was accused of pushing his kids, sometimes more than he should have, or, whatever. Fritz Von Eric was tame compared to Dory Funk Sr. Dory Funk Sr. was probably one of, if not the most powerful man in the National Wrestling Alliance at that time. Dory was as rugged as they come, from Indiana. He was a cowboy. He did have the Flying Mare Ranch, all that. Everything about him's a shoot. Tough as he could be. took his kids, came to Texas, because by God, who wouldn't want to come to Texas and raise their family as Texans? And the old man was just tough and very influential. The old man made sure that that Dory became champion. There's controversy over that when it was time to drop the title to Jack Briscoe, that Dory Sr. did not want his son to drop the title to a babyface. Jack Briscoe was a babyface. And a lot of conspiracy theorists out there that say, you know, the accident wasn't
the infamous wreck on the ranch, right?
Yeah. A lot of people dispute that. So that Dory could drop it to Harley, who was a heel, who then Harley could drop it to Jack. Then that was allegedly orchestrated by Dory Funk Sr. I have no idea the truth, or, you know, that's just the rumor and innuendo that you hear and that I've always heard my whole life in the business. But the beautiful thing about the Funks was you had the champion, Dory, who's out making title defenses every single week. But if you were in a territory and you had a date on the champ, you also had dates on the old man, and you had dates on Terry. So to get to Dory, you had to go through Terry and Dory Funk Sr. And sometimes, and a lot of times, most times, both of them, before you ever got to Dory. So what a great gig. Terry worked all over the world as the guy that came into the territory to soften up Dory's opponents. And Dory, you had to get through Terry first to even get a match with Dory.
I see.
And that's where Terry, you know, really learned. And that's where where he really went to school, because he was doing the same thing his brother was.
Right.
He just did it in front of him.
So it was sort of like a dress rehearsal for being the NWA champion.
Well, it was, but at the same time, it was a great spot because it was a way to make a title match mean more if it was personal.
Yes.
If you'd already had the little brother and daddy come in,
I see,
try and beat you up and beat you down before you got to the champ. And that was Terry and Dory Funk Sr.'s role. That I don't know that had ever really been done before. You know, you never had someone with brothers and stuff to be able to go in and do that. Jack came, and that was Jerry Briscoe's role, to go in and do that for his brother. But nobody did it like Terry and Dory Funk Sr. They were, man, Terry was definitely Dory Sr.'s son, man. Because Dory Sr. was a little wild, and Dory Sr. was, a double tough son of a gun. Very unorthodox, very different. And you could tell just by looking at him, man, that guy's been, he's been through the ringer. He's tough. He wouldn't be standing here if he wasn't a tough son of a bitch. And that's who Dory Funk Sr. was. Then you had the crazy younger brother who was willing to do any and everything to make sure that his brother left with that world championship. And that's where Terry started getting a little bit of, the reputation that, Terry's a little wild. But you can call Terry wild, unpredictable, whatever it is that you want to call him. He always delivered. He always drew. And, man, it was Terry fucking Funk.
Let's talk about when he gets his big moment. His brother before him has won the NWA championship, but Jack Briscoe, man, who we've talked about a little bit on the show, boy, you want to talk about an unbelievable performer. He had a 500-day run with the title, drops it to Giant Baba for a week, gets it back for another 366 days. So let's forget the 7-day experiment over in Japan. 866 days as the NWA heavyweight champion. And who's going to be the guy to dethrone this man? Well, who else but Terry Funk? And Funk became the man for 424 days. This is the era of the touring NWA champion. He wins it in Miami, Florida, December 10th, 1975. And I know that folks who are listening to this today, who maybe are my age and grew up in the Hulk Hogan era when Vince went national with the WWF, we sort of, in our mind's eye, think, well, the WWF's the biggest organization of all time. And that is true now. But in 1975, that was not the case. It was all about the NWA. And when you were the NWA world champion, that was the pinnacle. And Terry reached it and held that title for 424 days. The first time I believe a pair of brothers held that title. I mean, it didn't get any bigger than this in professional wrestling, right?
Dude, it was my goal. I wanted Tom to become NWA World Heavyweight Champion, and then a few years after that, I would. We'd be just like the Funks.
I love it.
But that, as young kids that know nothing and don't know any better, that's what we wanted to do. That was the dream. And the dream was for me, because he was the little brother. I wanted to be Terry Funk. Tom wanted to be Dory Funk.
Right.
They were the absolute best of their time. And when people talking, and again, I apologize for jumping around here, but on Twitter, somebody asked me, they said, hey, could you recommend one Terry Funk match to watch? There is one that everybody in this business should watch. July 1st, 1977, Houston, Texas, at the Sam Houston Coliseum. The champion was Harley Race. The challenger was Terry Funk. 2 out of 3 falls. And the match is stopped due to Terry's bleeding. Couldn't stop the bleeding. It was bleeding too bad to continue. He had Harley Race right where he wanted him. And the referee calls the match. They work a head and they work a leg. It is simplistic in nature, but every single thing they did meant something. Not one time in this 44 minutes of action do you see either competitor look to the audience and look for a reaction. Not one time do they pander to the crowd. They didn't have to. And by the way, there was no big angle associated with this match. It was about the World Heavyweight Championship. It was about the former champion Terry Funk trying to regain the championship he lost. Neither guy were a constant in the town. So it was kind of what we would call today an ice-cold match, but it was a championship match, 2 of the best of all time. No pandering to the crowd. Didn't even look at them because they were focused on each other. And they told a story through 3 falls that is a master class in psychology and a master class in working. Now, to some people in today's era, they may feel that, oh, wow, this is boring. If you're bored, then you're not truly a fan of wrestling, because it's expertly done by the way that Harley works on the head and the fact that Harley actually busts Terry's head open and that Terry can't continue because of the blood gushing from his head, which is why you work the head. Terry relentlessly goes back to the leg because Terry's finisher was a spinning toe hold. And every time Terry got a chance, he worked that leg until he finally got that spinning toe hold on him. It's simple and beautiful, and I cannot tell you how many times I've watched it. But every time that I put it on, I can't turn it off until the end.
We'll throw a link in the description. That's actually posted on YouTube, Bruce. So
it is on YouTube, yes. And the other thing is in this day and age where there are folks who are ill-equipped and ill-trained in the art of getting their heads busted open.
Right.
I would defy anybody to say and show me, well, Terry Funk. See right there, Terry Funk did it. You're not going to do it. I know where he did it because Terry showed me. Terry told he showed me. He told me. And then I had to look really hard. And it's not, there are places where you go, oh, that's it. No, that's not it. So it's an art.
Yes.
And Terry was one of the most beautiful artists on the face of God's green earth. In everything he did. His innovative promos in Florida. Standing in a shower, pouring motor oil over his head. Because you Quakers here in the state of Florida, you're a bunch of Quakers. You're greasy. You're filthy. Unheard of stuff. No, Terry didn't realize this man how long it would take to get all that oil out of his hair and his eyes.
Yeah.
But he didn't care. Because that was something that people remembered.
Yes.
Dusty, you egg sucking dog.
I
didn't know dogs sucked eggs. I swear to God, I did not know that dogs sucked eggs until Terry Funk told me that Dusty Rhodes was an egg-sucking dog.
Serious business. What I like best about Game Time is the low price guarantee. Not even the low price, the lowest price. How about that? They've got you covered with event cancellation protection, job loss protection. We're talking peace of mind when you use the Game Time app. Let me explain this Game Time guarantee. It means you always get the best price. Always. Here's what I mean. If you find the tickets in the same section and row for less money, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. How do you beat that? And you also eliminate the guesswork. We've all bought tickets before and we wonder, well, is that a good seat? Buddy, they got images of seat views. So you don't just look at the little map and say, oh, that's where it'll be. They give you a perspective shot so you can say, oh, okay, well, damn, that's going to be a pretty good shot. I like it. I got stuck with really bad WrestleMania tickets once. I was behind one of the doggone poles. That will happen with the Game Time app. You can find flash deals, last minute tickets. You can do it up until the very last day of the event. That's right, the day of the event. On Saturday, you want night 1 tickets? No problem. On Sunday, you want night 2 tickets? No problem. You gotta get the Game Time app. I'm telling you, it doesn't get any easier. You buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, you're all set. The tickets are sent straight to your phone. You don't even have to dig through your doggone email. So what are you waiting for? Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code WRESTLE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code WRESTLE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. We touched on the fact that he's the touring NWA champion. That means he's going to be literally in another town every day. That is not easy on a relationship. And as I understand it, the love of his life was Miss Vicki, and they were school-age sweethearts. And maybe while he was the champion, the travel became too much and they separated. And as I understand it, when he finally dropped the title and said, you know what? The biggest match, the biggest win of my career would be getting Vicki back. He did. I know you had a chance to meet and get to know Miss Vicki a little bit. What can you tell us about their relationship? Of course, sadly, she preceded him in death a few years ago, and I can't imagine how heartbreaking that was for him. The true love of his life wasn't professional wrestling. It was Miss Vicki. But being the NWA champion, man, that got in the way of that relationship. And he said, here's your belt back. I need my wife back. Talk to us about Miss Vicki.
You know, there's a saying that God makes them, God pairs them. Well, God made Terry Funk and God made Vicki Funk, and he paired them. They belong together. They complemented one another. I don't think that I ever heard a cross word between the two. I don't think that there was ever any time that Terry ever remotely, even in jest, would say something unkind about Vicki. Vicki was one of the most lovely people that I've ever had the pleasure of knowing. I had the pleasure of spending time with the two of them, you know, for many, many years. And she took care of Terry. And I think that's how Terry took care of her, was by being there to be taken care of. If that makes any sense at all.
Yeah.
Unbelievable spirit. As you see, the two beautiful girls, but it was just genuine love and genuine happiness that you saw when you saw the two of them together. And in later years, you know, Vicki traveled everywhere with Terry, and they didn't want to be apart. And as much insane things as Terry did in the ring, you know, Vicki was there at the end of the night with a cold beer, bandages, some salve, whatever it took to nurse her man back to health so he can make the town the next night.
So amazing.
And it was a true love story. But I don't know anybody that didn't meet Vicki that didn't love Vicki. She was just absolutely tremendous. And again, it was, she took care of her man, by God. And he absolutely just loved her to death.
I'm glad we got to talk about Vicki. The fans over in Japan, boy, they loved Terry to death. There's a pretty famous clip of Terry and one of his first, maybe the first of his many retirements, 1983, the infamous Forever promo. What can you tell us about why he connected with that audience over in Japan, what their reputation, he and his brother Dory, was, what they as a tag team meant, and then that infamous Forever promo, why that resonated so well all these years later?
Well, you know, you go back and you look at the relationship between Japan and the United States in as far as booking Americans to come and work in Japan. And at one time there was just one office until Giant Baba and Antonio Inoki split up and became All Japan with Mr. Baba and New Japan with Inoki. The Ricky Dozan and those guys from that office, and after Ricky had left, the Japanese used to send their young boys to Amarillo to learn. So you had the giant Shirai Baba, you had Inoki, you had Saruda, you had Kobayashi, all these big, young Japanese stars to be that would come and they would live with the Funks and they would work in the States. And that's where they would learn how to work.
Right.
Then they would come back as international stars in Japan because they had made it in the United States. At least that's how it was reported. So you had Dory Funk Sr. and then later on Dory Funk Jr., who became the liaison to the American side to book talent in Japan. If Baba wanted someone, he went through Dory Funk Jr. Dory was kind of like the booker. Dory learned Japanese. Dory's as fluent in Japanese as he is in English.
Oh, wow.
And so Dory understood that culture and understood what they were looking for. And Dory kept traveling. Another reason Dory never stopped traveling the world, because Dory was always looking for talent for Japan. Terry was more interested in being in the ring. I don't think Terry ever wanted to be the booker. I don't think Terry ever really wanted to be much more than a performer. And I know there were times that he tried, he and Murdoch and Mulligan and all those guys, they wanted to run the territory and what have you. Actually, that wasn't Terry's bailiwick.
Right.
Wasn't anything he really wanted to do. Terry just wanted to work. And you go back and you look at what Terry did as NWA champion, which was frowned upon by the NWA, by the way. Because Terry would go out and have these wild matches. Terry got the moniker, unpredictable. Because he was. And Terry did whatever he needed to do to get a reaction and to get people talking about him. And a lot of times the higher ups in the NWA did not really like that too much. They wanted their wrestling champion. They wanted their Luthez shooters, that, by God, if anybody tries them, he'll take them. That wasn't Terry Funk. Terry Funk was a by God worker. Terry Funk was an entertainer.
Right.
Terry Funk was a tough son of a gun. I don't know how many people would have wanted to try Terry because he could hold his own. Different way. Same thing with Junior. Different way. You talk about, Terry had that time as being the baby brother that would go and go to the markets and soften up Dory's opponents. There was that part of Terry that he learned and got used to traveling the world and doing all of that stuff. With Jack, you had Jerry. Jerry would go into the market beforehand to soften people up for his big brother, Jack. Mm. And, Jerry did that. Then Jerry was an NWA World Junior Heavyweight Champion. Now I always wish, that Jerry had been NWA World Heavyweight Champion. He was definitely worthy and would have definitely done a great job. But that was the uniqueness of that formula of brothers. Now it's reversed. Now baby brother's got the title. Big brother's got to go out and soften people up for his little brother.
That's right.
So now Dory's doing all of that. The rivalries that Terry had with Jack and Jerry Briscoe, just unbelievable. The rivalry with Harley Race that goes all the way back to the 60s in Amarillo, when Harley Race was Mad Dog Harley Race, Handsome Harley Race, just a kid, a punk kid, as was Terry. And they formed a bond, which there was always that bond and that friendship between Terry Funk and Dory Funk and Harley Race. Harley wasn't always this just grizzled veteran that by God all knew. There was a Mad Dog Harley race. Got arrested every other night. That Dory Funk Sr. had to calm down. Had to teach him how to be a businessman. Had to teach him how to chill out. Think about that. And Terry, I don't think conventionally didn't look at the business as the end all be all. Oh my God, you got to protect the business. You got to do this. You got to do that. Terry looked at it as, I believe I'm an entertainer. They're going to believe I'm real because I am. And I'm going to go out and I'm going to entertain them. I'm going to do shit they've never seen before. I'm going to make them believe when they see the unbelievable. And that's what Terry did, literally all over the world, man. Terry used to go into Puerto Rico for Carlos Colon and have riots every night. Would always laugh about, by God, I don't know how I'm going to get off the island this time, Junior. But one thing was for sure, you put the Funks on the card, it was going to sell out. They opened up Aruba. They opened up all those islands, the Caribbean islands, when they worked in Florida. The Funks, oh my God, man. The Funks owned Florida. A lot of people give, they talk about Pak Song Nam and Gary Hart and Bill Watts making the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. You can't leave Terry Funk's name out of that equation either.
Right.
Because it was Terry who came in and solidified the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. And they made it real. They made it believable. People believed that if Terry Funk saw Dusty pumping gas somewhere, that Terry Funk was going to jump him and shove that gas hose down his throat. So people believed because Terry made them believe that. And it's an art form, and it's a nuance that is lost somewhere along the way. It got lost. Yes, we became a lot more sophisticated. And yes, there were things that were socially unacceptable that were probably socially unacceptable then, but tolerated. Terry just made you give it a second thought before you walked up to him and said that wrestling wasn't what it was purported to be. I don't think many people said that to Terry Funk.
No.
Because they knew with the look in his eyes exactly what the answer was.
I want to talk to you about a story he told me once about a reporter. But before I do, I want to circle back to Harley Race because you spent a good time talking about Harley. And Terry told me once that he really had to advocate with the NWA for them to go with Harley. And you sort of laid it out earlier that Dory wound up dropping the title to Harley, but he was more of a transitional champion, only 57 days. And then just this historic run that Jack had. But ultimately it's Terry who's going to drop it to Harley, just like his brother Dory did. But now Harley wasn't a transitional champion. Harley would have an extended run, multiple extended runs. But as I understand it, the NWA, man, it was super old school. And to hear Terry explain, they didn't want a guy who had tattoos to represent the NWA. They didn't want a guy who didn't have that amateur background that so many other greats before him, like Jack Briscoe, had. So Terry had to really advocate for Harley. And Harley sort of broke the mold of what had been the image, if you will, of an NWA champion. And Terry was really pushing for that. Do you remember that being the case?
Absolutely. And the reason that Harley was chosen to beat Dory Jr. was because it was someone that both sides trusted. The Sam Mushnick and the NWA guys, they were like, okay, you know what? We trust Harley because he had been in St. Louis and Kansas City. He's from Kansas City and had been around for a long time, very trustworthy. But it was also someone that Dory Funk Sr. was comfortable with because Harley had been there and Harley was a stalwart in the Amarillo territory. Harley was a tough guy, but the thing about Harley was he was loyal. And I don't think anybody doubted that Harley would not do business, wouldn't do the right thing. Now, I got other stories on that later on, but we're not talking about Harley today. We are, but yeah. Yes, the Funks always had a fondness for Harley Race, and come on, Harley was different. Harley was a different type of NWA champion.
Yeah, that
he didn't necessarily look the part, but he was. He was the part. He was a guy that could walk in and be dressed in his suit and give you that interview, and you believed what Harley said to you because Harley believed what he said. And Harley's another one that you wouldn't go up to and just question the authenticity of what it is that Harley Race did every night.
I wanted to ask you about that because Terry told me another story about, and this is way back in the territory days when the Funks had their territory in Amarillo, that apparently there was a reporter at the local paper who had started to, quote unquote, expose the business. He was writing about the sport as if it weren't a legitimate athletic competition. And rather than, double down like maybe Vince McMahon did decades later and say, no, it's entertainment. Terry went the other way with it, and he called the guy and invited him to come down to the matches. And he made sure that they couldn't poke holes in anything he saw that night. And the guy ran a correction. Have you heard that story before?
I believe it because that was an old timer's way of handling that shit.
Yes.
So Paul Bosch used to do.
Yeah.
And you would say, hey, come sit them front row.
Yes.
You sit them front row, and then you have the stiffest, just brutal matches that you possibly can have.
And you don't
right
call
in front of them.
And you don't call anything in the ring, at least not verbally. So nobody hears anything, and everything they see looks 100% real because it is.
Because it was real.
Because it is. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We did the same. We did the exact same things when you would have doubting local reporters. And some of them were too chicken shit to come.
Right.
But when they would, it's like, no. You're not paying for your ticket. We're paying for your ticket.
I just want
all we ask you to do is report
the truth.
The truth.
Yes.
That's all we ask. We'll interview you. We'll put you on TV. Which was another, for newspaper reporters, because they're nameless, faceless,
yes.
Hiding behind a typewriter. We'll put you on TV, man.
Hey, I just want to give some context because I realize these days when people think, oh, well, a newspaper, how big of a deal could that have been? You have to remember, this is before everyone had the internet. This is before everyone had cable TV. This is before a lot of folks had a color TV. So this is an era where most folks get their news and information through the newspaper. In that generation, right. Some of the wealthiest people in any community, the most powerful and influential people, the people who could curry favor with business owners and politicians, those were the people who ran the newspaper. So when the newspaper, the very newspaper where you advertised your wrestling cards, had one of their reporters, quote unquote, go rogue and say, oh, this is that phony wrestling, that could be devastating to your business. So Terry's solution is, let's sit his ass front row and I'm going to beat the shit out of my opponent and let him write that. And he did.
Damn right.
It's amazing, really. And of course we know eventually wrestling did become more entertainment. And when I think of wrestling as entertainment with Terry Funk, a lot of things come to mind, but maybe the first that I saw as a tape trader was the infamous empty arena match with Jerry Lawler in Memphis. We've talked about his impact in Texas, We've talked about his impact in Florida and Japan, but in Memphis, my goodness, where we were looking for a monster to slay every month for Jerry the King Lawler, we found quite a foe in Terry Funk. What do you remember with the first time you saw the empty arena concept, the execution of Terry Funk and Lance Russell, and of course, Jerry Lawler, but then my eye, what a classic Terry Funk moment this would be.
I think one of the, at the time, I remember people making fun of it for the main reason being is, boy, what a house they drew in Memphis, huh?
Right.
You know, it was the empty arena match. And it was like, oh, shit, they sold more tickets than normal. When you look back on it and you look at it through a different lens, pure genius. It was fabulous. The fact that they were able to, go out and have that match, no audience reaction, no nothing, but they made every bit of it work. And it was, as crazy as you look there and see, man, they worked in the ring, which I found hilarious. They had an entire arena to work in, but they go into the ring to do spots. But, that's fun. But again, it's wrestling. And, Terry, my eye, Lance. I mean, it's just classic Terry Funk.
Yes.
But it was the psychology of the thing, man. It was beautiful. And I think that when you look back on it, man, that was ingenious. It was a television show. That was a match that garnered people's imagination even more so because I can't see it. I can't be there live. So I've got to watch it on TV, and it's going to be more gruesome than ever because they won't let the audience in. So this is going to be good. So that part of it is just pure genius on the part of Lawler on that, and just being able to put that whole thing together. It was entertaining as hell and told a great story. But Terry could do that any and everywhere he went. No matter what it was, Terry would go in and tear it up with the Sheik in Detroit. You could put Terry on a card with anybody.
Right.
And you knew that Terry was going to tear it up because that's what he did. That was his job. That was his passion. That's what he loved to do. And there were, all these rumors, when towards the end of Terry's career. And I think that it was more, Terry's on drugs. Oh, he's a drunk. He's all these things. I think it was just Terry getting worn out by the road, man. I think he was done. And I think that he was amplifying his frustration with the NWA and with being the champion at that time and just wanted out. And Jack, same thing, man. Jack just wanted out. Jack called him and said, hey, I'm dropping the title. I'm done.
Right.
And it was to young kids now, oh my God, I worked last weekend. Now they want me to work again this weekend. That's 2 weekends in a row. I've worked 4 times this month. Terry would work 4 times in one weekend.
Yeah.
And then every other day of the week, Terry would go from Atlanta to LA to Chicago to Miami to Dallas to Houston. Every night was not just a different city, a different state and city, and a completely different opponent, some of whom he had never heard of and or ever been in the ring with, but made them because he was Terry Funk. All those NWA champions, man, that's a lost breed and a lost art. Ric Flair's the last of those cowboys that actually did that. but Harley did it. Terry did it. Dory did it. Jack did it. Those guys did it every night. And you talk about Terry, and in the middle of that, Terry loved Japan, and Terry loved going to Japan. Was one of the few American stars that the Japanese public loved. The fans of Japan loved Terry Funk. They loved Dory Funk because there was a fascination with cowboys. And they were cowboys. They were the real deal. And I used to laugh when Terry would come in and Terry would have his cowboy boots. And there's a certain way that is a cattle rancher that if you tuck your boots in, you tuck your jeans into your boots, like on the inside, it means one thing. If it's on the outside, it means another. And basically it says like how many cattle you have.
Okay.
Okay. It's a symbol, but like cattlemen and ranchers know it. And I always Terry told me what it was one time, and I would always forget it. So I said, how many cows you got today, Terry? And then his damn horses would get sick from time to time. But
let's talk about that, because that was always the quote unquote excuse when Terry would leave the WWF. And I know we just mentioned he retired in Japan in 83, but wouldn't you know it? He winds up with the World Wrestling Federation in 85. And I realize that predates your time there, but he's going to be involved in some pretty big stuff there, working a program with Junkyard Dog. It was hotter than hell, having just left Bill Watts territory. But also too, we had a run with Hulk Hogan, including wrestling Hulk Hogan on NBC's Saturday Night Main Event. This is a big opportunity. Wrestling had just become a part of the pop culture thing. Cable TV was growing, but everyone had NBC. I mean, you could get that with rabbit ears. And so to have an opportunity to wrestle, on a big program in a prime time, if you will, type slot, like Saturday night's Main Event. I know it's not technically prime time, but you get where I'm going, against a guy who was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Like Hulk Hogan was a part of pop culture at that point. A lot of people would say, man, we're 10 years past when he won the NWA championship, but a lot of national folks are being introduced to him with all these newfound fans for the first time, but he doesn't stick around very long. Why do you think his run with Vince wasn't longer? And do you think his career could have looked a little differently had he hung around in New York longer in the mid 80s?
Well, first of all, you talked about, Terry being in the ring with the guy that's on the cover of Sports Illustrated, has his own cartoon show, has this, that, and WrestleMania, all these things under his belt. Who do you think was more nervous to be in the ring?
Oh, Hulk Hogan was nervous to be with Terry Funk, man. My goodness.
That's the kind of respect that Terry commanded.
Yes.
Didn't make a big deal out of it. That just happened. And Terry would poo-poo it. Oh, goddamn. Oh, goddamn. It's good to see you. No, we'll just go have some fun. Look, when Terry... when Terry told me he was going to retire, I laughed in his face. I was a kid. I think I was 22 years old or something like that. And I laughed in his face. I said, you can't retire. You're too young. He goes, no, Prichard, I'm going back. I'm just going to stay on the ranch and be with the kids and be with the family. I said, I don't see how that fits you. Well, we're going to find out. So when he came back, I don't even think he was out 6 months. And he comes back, man, and I saw him. And I said, how was that retirement, Terry? Oh, damn, Prichard, I just can't stay away. So every time he would retire, I would give him shit about, Terry, what number is this?
Right.
I don't know, 8 or 9. God damn it, I'm going to do it one day. I'm going to tell you that. And well, yeah, that part was just the retirements became a joke, because he just, he just never was going to retire, man. He was Terry Funk, for God's sake.
Well, 3 years after he wins the NWA World Championship in '78, he does a movie with a fellow named Sylvester Stallone, Paradise Alley. And when he gets an opportunity to step away from the WWF, he steps right into Hollywood again here in the mid-'80s. He records another film with Sylvester Stallone, Over the Top, a guilty pleasure of mine. Love that movie. And then a couple of years later, he had maybe his most famous role when he was with Patrick Swayze in Roadhouse. I think when most people think about Terry, quote unquote, in the movies, they think about Roadhouse, but boy, Sylvester Stallone sure held him in high regard, so much so that when he passed away, Sly sent a tweet out. He made quite an impression on Mr. Stallone, did he not?
Oh my God. So, Terry did Paradise Alley, and there was a guy named Lee Canalito. Lee Canalito was the co-star. Well, not co-star. Stallone was the star, but it was Stallone's little brother in the film. He was a boxer from Houston. Big guy, and all this stuff. And Terry was brought in to do the stunt work. Terry was brought in to help train Lee Canalito. And Stallone fell in love with Terry and was like, "Got this, this guy." Put Terry in the film as Frankie the Thumper, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
But Stallone would travel with Terry. They came to Houston for a big show. And there's a picture that was in the newspaper of Stallone sitting at ringside wearing Tom's headset. And it's a picture of Tom, Stallone, and Paul Bosch sitting at ringside. That was just so cool. But like whenever you see those pictures of Stallone with the black turtleneck and the short sleeves and with little arms and all that, with like Bockwinkel and Harley Race and Paul and everybody, that was at the Coliseum the night that Terry may have worked with Harley that night. I don't really remember, but Stallone was there, nice as could be. He just wanted to watch, he wanted to see what goes on. He wanted to see how the matches were directed by the television director, how he was calling shots and what they were doing, and what he wanted to be there to see the different angles and stuff like that, because they hadn't started principal photography yet. And nice guy, man, nice guy. But yeah, Terry and Stallone became friends. And Terry was great in that movie. He was absolutely great. And then same thing with Roadhouse and everything that he did. He was goddamn Terry Funk.
Well, goddamn Terry Funk wasn't done with wrestling. He just couldn't get it out of his blood. And even after, he goes and films the movie Roadhouse with Patrick Swayze, which is probably his most iconic and recognizable film. That comes out in May of 1989. It just so happens to be the same month that he's challenging Ric Flair and helping Ric Flair do a double turn, if you will, right on the heels of Flair finishing up an incredible trilogy with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Here comes Terry Funk, who was brought in to be one of the judges. Should there be a draw or some sort of controversial decision, we must have a winner. So they bring in Terry Funk in a tuxedo, and afterwards, in Nashville, man, there were fireworks, a pile driver on a table, something we hadn't seen in the mainstream, at least, like this. What a special moment. He was back. He was in better shape than ever, and he was about to have another incredible year. Were you excited to see? I know you probably would have wished he was with you guys, but he was creating some magic in '89 with Ric Flair, was he not?
Absolutely, man. That was some of the best shit. Because again, you got to see a guy in Terry Funk who, it's not a departure from who he is.
Right.
So that guy that sat there and makes jokes about retiring. Oh, you're retired, Terry. Yeah, no, God, I know. I'm just kidding with you, buddy. And it was magic, absolute magic.
A little controversy along the way. I mean, we start with a pile driver on a table, which again, this is before there was an ECW and before that was mainstream. And I realized there had been table spots before, but this was obviously a pretty special moment. But we see Terry Funk do something we'd never seen before or since in wrestling. They got in a little hot water with Turner, as I understand it. I never asked you your opinion on it. What did you think when he put the plastic bag over Ric Flair's head?
Horrible. Take that off.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Absolutely horrible. Just poor taste, poor timing. That particular
was over the line.
Was over the line. Yeah. Because especially at that point in time where we had so many different eyeballs on us.
Kids.
I mean, Rick yeah. And, Rick was, I think Rick was sensitive to a lot of things Terry was doing, and Terry was pushing the line, and, Terry brought the guy out with the yellow streak down his back and, made fun of Rick's teeth and made fun of Rick's nose and and here Rick was the baby face.
Right.
And, I think that Rick took some of it to heart, and people were a little hesitant. Okay, you know what, Terry, maybe some of these things are going too far. So Terry said, well, if you think that's far, what do you think about this? And would just go a little bit further. So that's the kind of guy Terry Funk was too. He would, he'd let you know.
He'd find the line and step over it.
He'd find the line every single time.
I think the end of the line for him in that run is maybe my favorite Terry Funk match. You mentioned yours from 77 with Harley. Mine's with Flair, the I Quit match from Clash of the Champions in Troy, New York, the New York Knockout. I think as far as I Quit matches go, to me, man, that's still probably the high water mark. I just love that match. You get some technical wrestling, you get some brawling, but just like that reporter in Amarillo decades before, you couldn't poke holes in it.
Oh my God. It was a classic.
Yeah.
It's another one, you go back to Terry Funk, Ric Flair, I Quit, an absolute classic. Beautiful on everybody's part.
Of course, we should mention that, even though he's going to step away for a bit again, and I want to mention, I don't even know that you knew this. I didn't know this, but Mick told me when I was recording his podcast the other day where we paid tribute to Terry Funk, that even in 89 here, he was hurting so bad during this feud with Flair that he would, on flights, he would put his knees on the floor and lean over on the seat just to relieve the pressure on his back. But man, when that damn bell rang, you couldn't tell any difference, could you? No, you couldn't. But not only his back, his knees, everything, every part of his body. Yeah. He hurt. He just hurt. And it had taken quite a toll on his body. So yeah, Terry was definitely a hurting puppy. He had actually invited, during the late 90s, 1997, I believe, he invited the camera crew for Beyond the Mat to go to the doctors with him where he would have his knee checked out. Both of them. And he talked about how, hey, in your good knee, this is the doctor speaking, of course, I'm paraphrasing, you have no cartilage here. It's just bone on bone. You should be in significant pain. But in your bad knee, I mean, this is going to be very degenerative very soon. And Terry sort of cut him off and said, how long will I be able to work or live my life pain free if I don't get a new knee? And the doctor basically said, you shouldn't have been able to walk in here today. It's to that level, but he still kept going. And along the way, of course, we had that moment in 1993, which we've touched on here before about Survivor Series. I wanted to just read you an excerpt from his book. This is directly from Terry's book about the WWF. They called me about becoming head booker. They were doing their big Survivor Series show in Boston, and they wanted me to wear some silly outfit with a blue mask to be one of Jerry Lawler's knights, taking on Bret Hart and 3 of his brothers in a big tag match. Their plan was Brett was going to beat me, then take my mask off and put his finishing hold, the sharpshooter, and beat me again. After that, they said I would become the creative head of the company, replacing Pat Patterson, my old friend. Patterson had gone from being Ray Stevens' tag partner to the WWF's booker, but Pat was looking to step down and take it a little easier. I met with them and had dinner with Pat. It was great. We laughed and told old stories. And then I went up to my hotel room and went to bed. And as I lay there, I got to thinking, I'm not sure I want to follow through with this deal. I got up the next morning and left a note for Vince that read, "My horse is sick. I think he's dying. I'll see you later." A couple hours later, I was at the airport when I heard them call my name for a call on the airport paging system. I was running by that time. You were there for this, a pretty famous moment in history for Terry Funk and his relationship with Vince. What'd you make of this? My horse is sick.
Well, he actually had called me on my machine at home. We had all been out at I think it's now the Hilton, but it was the Sheraton at the time, and gave everybody their outfits. And the idea behind the match was one of, there were legends under the mask that Lawler had, and we would take the masks off as they would be revealed throughout the match. And we didn't get one. And then, Terry left, and all we had left really was Greg Valentine. But there was a lot of drinking going on, and Brett told Terry, oh, hey, yeah, this is going to be great. And we're going to do this. I'm going to do this. And I'm going to take your mask off. Then I'm going to beat you with the sharpshooter, and then blah, blah, blah. That should have come from one of us. Didn't think in a million years that, that's why, guys will always say, why didn't you tell me early? Well, that's why. Because sometimes you can, the way that we would have delivered it and the way that Brett delivered it, maybe two different things. What wasn't there? I don't know. But then again, you also got Terry and how Terry's hearing it. I've never heard one time Terry coming in to take over the creative. Pat was still involved at that point, and we were looking for someone, yes, but I don't think Terry's name had ever come up because Terry wasn't about to move from Texas to Connecticut. That wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
But then Terry had called, because I'm the one that called Terry originally to do the shot. And he left me a note. Prichard, I love you. I just got to go home. My horse is sick. And I forget who he gave it to. He might have given it to Ross Hart or Owen or somebody. But he folded up the outfit and put that note right on top. And they came and delivered it to me. I was like, son of a bitch.
Do you think
he wouldn't come to the phone. I mean, we knew he was there.
Yeah.
But, then said never again.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. That was a bridge burning moment at the time?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Except the matches didn't work all the way. They didn't burn that entire bridge.
No, they never do. But he did burn himself and Cactus Jack a couple of years later. This became maybe the most famous tape traded moment of all time. The IWA King of the Death match from 1995 over in Japan. Of course, Onita was doing his thing with FMW, but this thing where you saw these legends, Cactus Jack we had seen in WCW, and Terry Funk, by God, was the former NWA champ, and just a few years prior had made absolute magic with Ric Flair. And now they're rolling around in explosives and barbed wire. Oh my. What do you remember about the first time you saw that and you saw that Terry Funk was in the middle of it?
Hated it. Not a fan. And think that Terry needed to lower himself to do that.
Right.
In addition, Terry leaving Baba was, that was very controversial as well. And I never thought Terry would do that. but he did, and Terry was his own man. And it's kind of hard to get mad at Terry because Terry would rationalize it as to this is what I want to do. And who's going to tell Terry Funk what he should and or should not do? So, he did it. I hated it because I thought, wow, man, somebody's going to get hurt bad here on these things. The barbed wire and all that crap is crazy and stupid enough as it is. I'm just not a fan of that. But the bomb matches, I remember going over, and I was in Kawasaki Stadium, I believe it was, and they had a big bomb match, and everybody's going, oh, wait till you see his bomb match. Wait till you see his bomb match. It was, again, I've come up with some pretty stupid matches in my time, and some pretty shitty television in my time. This took the cake. It was, they do a match and they have a countdown, and then just shitloads of pyro goes off.
Right.
With really loud concussions and lots of smoke. And I mean, it takes 10 to 15 minutes for the smoke to dissipate. And that's it. You watch a match, there's a clock going, referee's in a hazmat suit. They all lay on top of each other. And a bunch of pyro goes off. The ring doesn't explode.
Right.
It's
a spectacle. It's entertainment.
Not really. It's annoying. You know what? I mean, it's like, it's not even good pyro. It's concussions loaded that just make so much dust. It's like it's not even a fiery pyro or anything like that. It's just loud and smoky. Not good.
Speaking of loud and smoky, he has an opportunity to make a promotion viable. And I know we've argued that before, but the WWF obviously is not where he's going to hang his hat at the end of 93. We talked about what he does at Survivor Series in November. 1 month later, in December of 93, he does a favor for his old pal Todd Gordon and becomes the ECW World Heavyweight Champion. This is before it's Extreme. It's the Eastern World Heavyweight Championship. It is very much just a small independent territory. But on the back of Terry Funk, they would create a really nice roster for themselves that gets some momentum and gets them on pay-per-view. And they actually have him win their world title for the second time on their very first pay-per-view in 1997. But a lot of ECW originals would argue, without Terry Funk, there is no ECW. Guys like Sabu, guys like Shane Douglas, guys like Raven and Sandman or Tommy Dreamer. And I think, I know you have had a lot of fun poking fun at ECW, but boy, Terry Funk did just so much good for so many guys. I mean, he helped make Cactus in 95 in the IWA King of the Death match, but then he helped.
Wouldn't have been look, you talk about Eastern Championship Wrestling and I don't know Todd Gordon, so I have nothing good, bad, or indifferent to say about Todd Gordon. I just don't know him.
Right.
I did know Eddie Gilbert.
Right.
And Eddie Gilbert and I were friends. I don't think there'd be an ECW if it wasn't for Eddie Gilbert.
Sure.
And in many ways, and Terry Funk, when you said Terry did that as a favor for Todd, I would probably suspect, and I could be wrong, I may have my time frames all worked out, but I could see Terry doing that for Eddie.
There you go.
Definitely. And then Paul Lee after that. And Terry liked Paul, and without Terry Funk, I don't know that ECW ever would have gotten on the map. Terry gave it credibility, and Terry was able to go in and make those three letters mean something. I don't know without Terry that they ever could have done that.
If you haven't heard already, it's smooth sack summer, Daddy. When you're playing in the summer sun, make sure you're scaped from pubes to bum. That's right. This is the summer to keep your balls cool while looking hot with Manscaped. The leaders in below-the-waist grooming are making sure we have a ball this summer by giving our pants partners everything they need to stay fresh. Dive headfirst into the smooth sack summer by going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping with our promo code STW. The Manscaped Performance Package 4.0 has everything you need to prepare for that summer bod. They have built the ultimate grooming bundle for your summer grooming. It all starts with the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer that features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. The Lawnmower 4.0 has a 7,000 RPM motor, a new multi-function on-off switch that can engage a travel lock, and it gives you the ability to turn the 4000K LED spotlight on and off when needed for a more precise shave. Did I mention this trimmer is waterproof too? Beach, lake, or shower, this razor will devour even the strongest pubes. Now that we have the perfect haircut, use Manscaped's liquid formulations to keep that freshness even at the hottest summer barbecues. Most importantly, use the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant to stay cool in the heat. With a soothing aloe vera formula, it's the best in business for the below-the-waist freshness, and this clear drying formula will keep you looking good while smelling good. Manscaped even threw in 2 free gifts with their Performance Package 4.0, the Manscaped Boxers and the Shed Travel Bag. Wearing sandals with some nasty looking toenails during the summer months? Well, take a look at the Shears 2.0, a luxury nail grooming kit. This kit includes stainless steel cutters, tweezers, and grooming scissors. With the Performance Package, your balls will be ready to impress, but make sure you cover the rest with Shears 2.0. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code STW at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code STW at manscaped.com. It's smooth sack summer, boys. Get on board or get left behind. It was really special stuff. So many great ECW moments. I know you weren't there for those, but there were some controversial moments too. The throwing of the chairs, the flaming chair, the flaming towel that went out in the crowd. He's doing moonsaults. He's got ladders on his head. There's barbed wire that he has to be cut out of with Sabu. I mean, just craziness. And somewhere along the way, he winds up working with you guys as well. Before he retires again in September of 1997 at his retirement show there in Amarillo, he's actually on your biggest show in a long, long time, the Royal Rumble, 1997, my favorite Royal Rumble. We've covered it in the archives. Was that just as simple as, hey man, if we're going to do a Royal Rumble in a big show in Texas, got to have Terry? After he had quote unquote burned the bridge in 93, how do you remember him coming back here for this show?
I called Terry and I asked Terry, hey, would you like to be in the Rumble? We're in Texas. In addition to that, we're going to be doing a live Shotgun Saturday Night, which was a syndicated television show that we did on Saturday nights at midnight and aired live across the country. And Terry was the first person at Diamonds in Dallas that day, sitting in what was the makeshift dressing room. Had his bag there, his chair all kicked back and feet up. And I walked in. He got up and I gave Terry a hug and said, good to see you, man. Love you. He sat back down and he says, what are we doing tonight, Prichard? It's a night off, Terry. Going to work with Brett, have a hell of a match. Let's get him over. And maybe a little promo beforehand. But all I ask of you, this is live. And we're everywhere. I know it's late night, but we're live, and we got a lot of eyeballs on us. Please just watch your language. No hells, no goddams, no shit. Please. And he looks at me and he's all leaned back and says, did Junior send you in here to tell me that? And I laughed and I said, Vince did mention to me to please talk to you about it, but it was on my checklist. I said, just we can't do it, Terry. Oh, damn, Prichard. Don't worry about me. I said, all right, just. And I reminded him right before he went out, Terry, please watch your language. I think he called Vince a Yankee bastard. Jim Ross in Oklahoma, son of a bitch. And then turned to Brett and said, your mother's a whore.
Oh, goodness.
When people say, hey, Bruce, whatever happened to that show Shotgun Saturday Night? I say, Terry Funk. So, yeah, we got thrown off the air for those comments. I think we had a goddamn in there. I think we had everything that I asked him not to do, he did.
Yeah.
And there's one point in the match where they had the big troughs of beer.
Yes.
On ice, like, old-fashioned wash tubs. And at one point, he grabs me and put me in it. In the ice and the water and the beer. And I didn't have a change of clothes. So
What? Yeah. Why would you?
Frozen. And yeah.
In December in New York.
No, it was in San Antonio.
Oh, that's right.
Diamonds
That's
and
right.
Denims, yeah.
That's right.
Denim and diamonds,
Whatever it is. Yeah.
But it was a bunch of drunk cowboys that were there to do some line dancing and,
What?
I stopped loving her today.
She stopped works in 2023 too. Hey, so eventually we know that Terry Funk gets a call from Jim Ross about coming back to team up with his old pal Mick Foley, who at
That's
the time.
a lie. Did
Okay.
not get a call from Jim Ross. He got a call from me.
Okay. Here's what
And
Terry
it
wrote in
was-
his book.
Okay.
He says, I got ready for my big debut on Raw that Monday night in December. This is 97. And the plan was for me to come out of a box. Bruce Prichard, one of the backstage guys, was describing to me what they wanted me to do. I said, that's it? You just want me to come out of the box? Well, yeah, he said, just come out of the box. Do you want to come out as anything? And before my brain could fully process the question, my lips blurted out, Chainsaw Charlie, give me a chainsaw so I can go out there. I can't explain it. It just popped in my mind. They asked me what I wanted to wear and then got me some Levi jeans and a pair of suspenders. I already had a red shirt, so I kept that. And then they got me a woman's pantyhose stocking and some baby powder to put on my head, all at my request. What an idiot. I guess I could have just gone out there without anything over my head, but I wouldn't have been Chainsaw Charlie with Terry Funk's head, would I have been? I'd have been Chainsaw Terry. So that's his version of how he remembers becoming Chainsaw Charlie. This is an interesting idea. Why not just be Terry Funk?
Because he wanted to be Chainsaw Charlie, motherfucker.
There you go.
So there's a lot more to this story. I was in Japan with Terry when we were doing the Ken Shamrock Vader
Yep.
match in Japan with Onita. And I'm with Terry and so on and so forth. And we're on the bus. And Corporal Kirshner was on that tour as Leatherface. Is that his name? Was that his name over there?
Yeah. And by the way, this would have been late September 97 when you're on this tour.
Okay. And he had the chainsaw gimmick.
Yeah. Ah.
And Terry tells me, he says, you got to watch this kid. He's goddamn, this is a hell of a gimmick. You need to bring him in. I'm going to tell you what you do. You bring him in, you know what his name is, Prichard? It's Chainsaw Charlie. I said, what? Chainsaw Charlie. I tell you. Dear friend of mine, John Ayers. John Ayers was a football player and dear friend to Terry. And we used to go to this barber Saturday afternoon, and this son of a bitch would just like chop our hair all to hell. And we were terrified of him, and we called him, instead of whatever the hell his name was, we just called him Chainsaw Charlie. because we were terrified. We'd cry. I don't want to go see Chainsaw Charlie. He's Chainsaw Charlie. Bus driver, goddamn, pull this fucking bus over. Prichard needs a beer. Made the bus driver pull over and go to the they have vending machines that have beer in them in Japan, just on the street, and made him get a bunch of beer for Terry and myself, using me as the excuse because I was the international guest. So now when I call Terry to do this, I say, hey, yeah, man, they'd like to have you come out of a box. That's it. I said, well, what do you think? What would you like to do? And he starts thinking, and John Ayers had passed recently. And he says, you remember that story I told you about Chainsaw Charlie? I said, yeah. He says, what if we did that? And I'm thinking, you want to bring in Kirshner to be Chainsaw Charlie? He goes, no, me. He says, oh, goddamn, I'll put a hood on. Fucking goddamn, some kind of wacky get up and go to the ring, do a chainsaw, do all this shit. Well, I'm loving it because I'm thinking to myself that Vince isn't going to be real high on Terry Funk coming back, but maybe he'll really appreciate Chainsaw Charlie because it was a gimmick. And those jeans that he had were mine. Never got them back. And we rehearsed the damn thing and all that good shit. And he had a real chainsaw to cut out of the box. Then he would go back in and we switched the chainsaws out so that he would get the chainsaw without the chain so that it wouldn't cut anything. But it would still make noise and it would still turn so that you could make sparks on the ring. But what Terry didn't do in rehearsal was swing the chainsaw and hold it over his head and shake it. Because in order to make a chainsaw go, it must be full of gasoline. And Terry is shaking the chainsaw over his head, and you see gasoline pouring out on top of Terry. And now Terry is going to the ring and hitting the ring with the chainsaw, and the guy's going, oh my God, he's covered it. Tell him to stop. He's going to catch on fire. I'm like, why? I go, the gasoline. I said, why didn't we put a fuel cell or something in there? And yeah. So Terry almost caught on fire that night. But yeah, that was Chainsaw Charlie. And then, we did the thing where the Outlaws put Mick Foley and old Chainsaw Charlie in the dumpster and threw him over the edge and all that shit, which was interesting. And then you fast forward to WrestleMania in Boston. You had Mick and Terry against the Outlaws, and I think Mick and Terry won that night. But they come back, and I see this humongous bruise on the back lower, I think, left side of Terry's back, and it looks nasty.
Yeah.
And I asked him, I said, hey, man, you need to go get that checked out. Okay. He shows up at the party, he and Vicki, and I said, you get it checked out? Yeah, just, a little painful. I said, what they say? I don't know. So Vicki pulls me off to the side, and she says, Bruce, I've seen him, go through a lot of things. I'm worried about this one. You need to make him go to the doctor. So I can't make him do anything. He says he'll only listen to you. My wife, who knows, nothing about the business or anything, but she knew Terry.
Right.
And she knew Vicki. And so she's like now all just freaked out. I'm like, just stop. It's an injury. Shit happens. So I go over, I'm sitting down talking. I said, Terry, how you doing, man? I said, can I take a look at your little boobo there? And it's 1,000 times worse than what I saw at the building. I said, Terry, what would you say if I said, I can get you a ambulance out of here. No one will ever see. And they'll take you right in. They'll get you checked up right away. And we'll have you back here before last call. God damn, Prichard, I don't want to go to the hospital. I said, okay, let me try this another way. I'm going to get you an ambulance. You're going to get in it. You're going to go to the hospital. You're going to get checked out. And I'm going to try and get you back here before last call. You don't have a choice. You need to do this. She says, I love you, kid. Could you get me 2 or 3 vodkas with grapefruit and a splash of cranberry for the trip? Sure, Terry. And I went and got him 3 grapefruit and cranberry, grapefruit, cranberry, and vodka. I squeezed a lime too. Gave it to him. I got our security. They came and got him. Like nobody knew. Nobody noticed. We pulled the ambulance inside the hotel and got him there. And he walked out, but he was pretty well fucked up. He burst something. And he just would not stay over. Gave him a bunch of fluids, gave him some antibiotics and stuff, and he's just a tough son of a bitch, man. But he was not. He didn't want people seeing him getting into an ambulance. I was like, no one will see you. And kept calling Vicki and giving me updates and all that shit all the way through. It was Terry, and there was somebody else I had to send to the hospital that night too. They were a horrible night for injuries. But yeah, Terry's double tough son of a bitch, man.
No doubt about it. I know that he was around in the early, more formative years, but that was a WrestleMania moment. His dumpster match, and WrestleMania had become the thing. Do you think WrestleMania or the size of these shows, these things that, younger generation really aspire to be? I mean, again, Funk started wrestling in 65, almost 20 years before there was a WrestleMania. So, did that stuff matter to Terry, do you think? Or was he excited that the quote unquote kids were excited?
I mean, I think Terry looked at it in awe, but it was another booking. It's what he did. That was his job. That was his life. It was Sunday to him. So I think he was in awe of what the business had become and like, holy cow, look at this. But he had a job to do. That's how he looked at it.
I love Terry Funk's WWE run. You knew this was probably going to be it. On the way out, he gets a great Falls Count Anywhere brawl on a taped Raw with his old pal Mick Foley. This is once Mick is sort of transformed into Dude Love, but now he's back as just Mick. And he hangs out a little bit and gets some time to share the ring with like JBL. And of course he's there for Mick's biggest moment, in the summer of 98 with, the king of the ring, Hell in a Cell, and gets choke slammed out of his shoes, but he doesn't stick around. He winds up working with ECW a bit more and certainly WCW. And then he comes back and is a part of what you guys do for One Night Stand at the Hammerstein Ballroom in 2006. And then, of course, he and his brother Dory would be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2009. In that gap there, you know, where he's still going to go work for WCW and he's still going to do some stuff for ECW. Do you think he ever had any interest in any sort of work behind the scenes? I mean, why not stick around and be a more permanent member of the WWE team?
He didn't want to. Just didn't want to. Terry wanted to work. And then if Terry wasn't working, he wanted to be home. Terry didn't want the travel. Terry didn't want the responsibility. Terry didn't want the BS. And Terry wanted to be his own man with his own rules and be able to do it his way. So if that meant that he was going to not make as much money, that was fine with him. He liked his ranch. He liked riding his horses. He liked being home. He liked going out, making the occasional appearance. But the rest of it didn't mean that much to him. As much as it did. I'm not saying it didn't mean anything to him, but that wasn't life or death to him. Life and death to him was his family and being happy. So if he was happy doing XYZ, he didn't give a shit about D, E, and F. It's just who he was.
It's quite a legacy he leaves in professional wrestling. I know you weren't there when he went in the Hall of Fame in 2009, but boy, few as deserving or more deserving. My goodness. I mean, Mick Foley said recently, you know, the Mount Rushmore conversation is such a big thing in wrestling. Terry deserves his own mountain, according to Mick. Mick wrote, in a business with its fair share of takers, Terry Funk was a giver, setting an example of unselfishness and professionalism for everyone who crossed his path. So who's going to fill his shoes? My guess is that no one ever will. Terry Funk was one of a kind. When was the last time you talked to Terry, and what do you think his legacy in professional wrestling will be?
Well, first of all, I think that the words Mick Foley spoke sum it all up.
Yeah.
Beautifully said. It's been probably, I'm trying to think, 9 months, a year maybe, that I spoke to Terry. When he went into the home and everything, during that time, spoke to him briefly. I'm not sure that he said he did, but I'm not sure that he really knew who I was at the time. You know, he had the onset of Alzheimer's and dementia or whatever it was. I don't know which, but at least I got to hear his voice. And, just told him I loved him and just said, you need anything, let me know. But he had people there taking care of him and everything. But, it had been probably the first of the year, if that.
Dave Pierce wants to know, what is Bruce's favorite memory of Terry? You've shared a lot of good ones with him today, but when you think of Terry, what's your favorite laugh out loud? The more you think about it, the more you smile moment with Terry.
I think that, it's the intimate moments. I always go back to that night sitting in the parking lot of the White House Hotel and being 16 years old and drinking beer and eating double bacon cheeseburger with Terry Funk, my childhood idol. just nobody can ever take that away from me. And that was just so surreal that, I still have to pinch myself and go, oh my God, that actually, shit, that really happened. And Terry was the kind of guy that, he never met a stranger. And if he met you, he always remembered, even if he didn't, he lets you think that he did. But, I had the pleasure of being around him, getting to know him and work with him for a lot of years. And, a lot of people, man, may have their idols and stuff in different ways, but, I got to meet mine. I got to work with mine. And so I think every moment, stopping the bus in Japan, making sure I was taken care of in Japan, letting Onita and everybody know, that I was with Terry. Don't fuck with him. He's my friend. Those moments are the best.
We often say in times like these, thoughts and prayers. That doesn't ever seem like it's really adequately done. I mean, it's never enough. I, for one, am happy that Terry's with his dad and the true love of his life, Vicki, again. But he leaves. And his horse. That damn horse is well and alive. He leaves behind quite a legacy and a wonderful family and a whole bunch of great memories. And we hope you guys will go out of your way to relive some of those great memories and throw it in your WWE Network search machine on Peacock, and do the same over on Google and YouTube and anywhere else you can get a little bit of Terry Funk. Because even if you grew up in the Hulk Hogan and Stone Cold and Rock era, as I explained to my pal, Terry Funk was your favorite wrestler's favorite wrestler. And tragically, he is not the only loss we suffered this week. Before we clicked record, Bruce, you told me you have not yet had a chance to process the loss of Wyndham Rotunda, who we knew as Bray Wyatt professionally. He didn't get an opportunity to live nearly as full of a life as Terry Funk did, passing away in his mid-30s with a whole family of young children behind. And I know now is probably not the time you're not ready to talk about it. You're not able to process it. This isn't us avoiding not talking about current stuff. It's just hard to wrap your head around, right, Bruce?
Yeah. I hadn't processed it yet. I just really haven't. I'll share, I was in a meeting on Wednesday and we were talking about guys that punch with their left hand, lefties, how difficult it is sometimes because they're so awkward when you're working with them. I said, yeah. I said, there was no better puncher than Terry Funk, who was a lefty and threw a left-handed punch. And started telling Terry stories, and then I said, oh my God, you mentioned his name, and holy shit, he's just passed. And that was bad enough. Thursday, getting the news about Wyndham. I kind of been preparing for Terry for a little while.
Right.
I knew he was sick. I knew, he lived a long, full life, man. Great life. And Wyndham, man, rest in peace. I love that kid. And my heart goes out to his family. Mike, Mike, I mean, it's just really hard to process. Really hard to process. And, we'll see. Maybe we'll do Wyndham next week. I just, with all due respect, please, I can't do it right now. That's all. And so sorry for that loss, man. That's a big one. And that's life's too short. Hug those that you love. Tell them you love them. And when you're done hug them a little longer. But tell those that you love that you love them, man, and cherish every day. Because tomorrow's not guaranteed. So we'll get to it.
Well, I love you, Bruce, and I thank you for the time today. I can't imagine how tough this week was. I know that there's the rat race that is creative in wrestling. And, we can all get caught up in our daily stresses and think about our haves and our have-nots at work or personally or professionally or whatever. But it's moments like these this week that bring clarity and put a lot of new, well-deserved perspective on what's really important.
Puts it all in perspective, man.
Yeah.
What you think is important, it doesn't mean shit.
Yeah.
Just live life and be good.
Being good to each other is important. Tell your people you love them. We love you guys. We appreciate you joining us for a special edition of Something to Wrestle, and we'll be back sooner rather than later, right here with Bruce Prichard. So long, everybody.
Rock on.